Welcome back to Breslov campus. An insight in one of Rebbe Nachman's tales, his parables. The parable is called Kaptzin Pasha. In the story, in the parable, Rebbe Nachman presents a story of a Jewish minister who was a minister for the Pasha, the Sultan, the emperor, the Turkish emperor. And this emperor, this Sultan, he had a tremendous love and respect for the Jewish minister. And this caused a lot of jealousy and hatred from the other non-Jewish ministers. They couldn't stand why and how this king was spending a lot of time talking and enjoying himself in conversation with this Jewish minister. And there was one minister, his name was Kaptzin Pasha, and he very much hated the Jews, and especially this Jewish minister. And he thought out a plan how he can harm this man, this Jewish minister. And the plan was like this. He approached one day the Jewish minister, and he told him, you should know that the king tells us how much he likes talking with you and enjoys your company, etc. But there's one thing he cannot stand, is your bad breath. You got to do something about it, because the king suffers a lot from it. He told us that he can't stand his bad breath. He loves you, he likes talking with you, he cherishes your words and your counsel, but he can't stand your bad breath. So I suggest you take some type of a cloth and soak it with nice smelling fragrances and put it in front of your mouth, so when you talk to the king, to the emperor, the sultan, he won't be disgusted and an awkward feeling by your bad smell in your mouth. So he did that. He said, wow, I didn't know, thank you for telling me. And the next day, the Kaptzin Pasha, the Jewish minister, he approached the king. But before the next day arrived, this Kaptzin Pasha, seeing that he was able to convince the Jewish minister, he went to the emperor, he sought an audience with the emperor, the sultan, and he said, I have something very important to tell you. You should know that we know you very much cherish the Jewish minister that you have, but there's one thing that he told me about, that he can't stand the king's bad breath. And he said, what? How dare him? This is an insult to the king. He doesn't stand my bad breath. And the Kaptzin Pasha said to the Sultan, emperor, I'll prove it to you. You're going to see tomorrow that he can't already stand it so much. He's going to come tomorrow with a cloth over his mouth and his nose, so that he shouldn't smell your bad breath. And he said, let's see. If this is true and it's going to happen, I swear I'll have him killed. Because this is a disgrace to me, the king. I should have bad breath. And also, to the extent that he's going to put a cloth in front of his mouth, how dare he do that? So the next day it actually happened that the Jewish minister came before the king with the cloth, and the king was very hurt, very angry, and he decided to send the Jewish minister to be executed. And how did the Sultan have certain people executed? There was a certain address with soldiers, unknown to anybody. Even other ministers didn't know the address and the whereabouts of the location of these soldiers. And their order was, as soon as anybody would come to them with a letter from the king, it would be understood that this person has to be killed. It's an order from above, from the royalty, from the king, that this person should be killed. They had a special furnace there, and they would take the person and throw him into this furnace, which was stoked at a very high level of heat, and he would die instantly. So, and they wouldn't open the letter to read it. There would be no need. As soon as anyone would bring the letter, they had strict orders to kill the person bringing the letter. So the Sultan gave the Jewish minister this letter. He wrote on the address, can you please take this letter to this address? And he said, of course. And he, being a minister, not knowing what is the address, he would go like a regular person, not knowing what's the address there. He was ready to go. So he was on his way to go to take the letter, because it's an order from the Sultan, from the emperor, so he has to do it immediately. On his way to take the letter, a Jewish man came running to the minister, begging him to perform the circumcision on his son. He had a newborn son, and he reached the 8th day, and he was looking all over for this minister, specifically him, and there was no one else to do the mitzvah of Brit Milah. And this minister, who was an expert moel, knowing how to do circumcision, he took upon himself in life never to forego this mitzvah. That if ever any Jew would approach him to do the mitzvah of circumcision, he would never let it down. And here now he was faced with a dilemma. That on one hand, the king is telling him to send this letter to the address, and he has to do it. It's an order from the king. You can't go against it. But on the other hand, he has this mitzvah that he took upon himself to perform circumcision whenever he's asked. So he pushed aside the king's order for the sake of doing this special mitzvah that he gave so much self-sacrifice for, and he went to do the Brit Milah. But he still wanted to take care of the letter. So what did he do? On the way to the Brit Milah, he passed by the office, the residence of Kaptzin Pasha, this evil minister who was the one whose plot was to have him killed. And he said, listen, the empress ordered me to take this letter to a certain address, and I cannot do so because I have to do the mitzvah of circumcision. Can you please take this letter? And Kaptzin Pasha was overjoyed, because now have an extra reason why the king should kill the Jew, because he's not fulfilling his orders. So he said, why, certainly I'll take the letter, with pleasure. So Kaptzin Pasha took the letter, he got to the address, he handed the letter to the soldiers. As soon as they saw the letter from the king with the royal insignia of the king, the emperor, the sultan, they grabbed Kaptzin Pasha and they threw him in the furnace, and he died instantly. The next day, the Jewish minister came back to the palace, and the emperor could understand, why is he still alive? And he asked him, did you deliver my letter? And he said, my dear emperor, I have to tell the truth that I could not deliver it myself. I gave it to Kaptzin Pasha to deliver. And why did you not deliver it? He said, because I had to do a circumcision. I was asked to perform the circumcision, and this is one mitzvah, one commandment from my God that I can never ever put down. Even whenever I'm asked, I took upon myself to do this very special performance. So the king opened up to him, and he said, why are you putting the cloth in front of your mouth when you talk it to me? He said, very simple, because 2 days ago, Kaptzin Pasha, your emperor, the one your minister was just killed, he told me that the king can't stand my bad breath. And he said, what? Kaptzin Pasha told me that you can't stand my bad breath. So then he realized, there's no one like the God of the Jewish people. Look how your God has saved you. I was planning to kill you. I was so offended by what Kaptzin Pasha told me that I had ordered you to be killed. And look how the God of Israel saved you. This is the story that Rebbe Nachman told. And the message is pretty amazing. Is that when you believe and stand for something, and you go all the way with it, you don't give in ever. You take this mitzvah, like Rebbe Nachman says, quoting the Gemara, that every Jew should take one devotion and be very careful with it. To take this one devotion, like in the case of this Jewish minister, the thing he took very much was the mitzvah, because it is a mitzvah, of performing a circumcision. And he took upon himself this mitzvah that he would never forego it no matter what. Even if the emperor himself would ask him to do something else, he would push it aside for the sake of this mitzvah. When somebody has mesirat nefesh, self-sacrifice for doing something which he knows is right, he will see in life that he never loses out. You never lose out when you're giving self-sacrifice for a right item, for the right reason, and you're dedicated and devoted to it. You will see in life that you never lose out. Just the opposite. Blessings come to a person when they show self-sacrifice for an item that they've taken upon themselves. Some people, for example, take upon themselves the mitzvah of tzitzit, not to go anywhere without tzitzit. Some people take upon themselves not to skip a day without going to the mikveh. You have many people have devotions. Everyone is different. Everyone takes something that they are connected to, that they feel very much connected to doing it and dedicated and devoted to it. And when you show and express the self-sacrifice for that mitzvah, in the end, you only win.